All right, so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be adding in a blocking volume, okay? So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be adding that in here, and what I'm also going to do is switch to the top perspective. Now the reason why I'm switching to the top perspective is simply because it's a little bit easier to it's a little easier to work with here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to simply drag that out so that this blocking volume is there. Now let's hop back into the perspective, and you should see that the blocking volume is here. Now in theory the blocking volume should be a little bit bigger, something more like that, and it doesn't matter if it overlaps. So let's go ahead and let's play it here, and then blocking volumes are pretty standard in games, just because sometimes the geometry of the art doesn't really mesh well with any kind of the with the player here, and sometimes people can get stuck. And I mean, if you've played a game where you've got stuck before, this is exactly what I'm talking about here. Now, there's a couple tips that I have with the blocking volume here. So if you zoom in here, and I'm zooming really close here, you see that the ledge here, the ledge is in purple, and the blocking volume is in orange. Because this purple volume here is something you can jump on, you definitely want to move this over and make sure that they're either the same or uh, one step over here. So the reason is that the player will in theory get blocked here. Now what does happen is, it can, when you add blocking volumes, you really have to test it, because let's say you're holding a gun, like in this example. Well, that gun might collide with something and it could get stuck. Now when it comes to these kinds of bugs, it's really difficult to test for them, and it's really difficult to repeat them. So what I recommend doing is, when you're doing this, you want to be fairly safe. And if the more safe you are as like an independent developer, the less chance you have of it actually not working. And it's something that it takes a little bit of experience. And this will differ from engine to engine. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to move it a bit over here, and I'm also going to make it just a bit bigger. What would really be smart in this particular instance is adding in the blocking volume and making it bigger than this other block here. And that would just be the smart thing to do. So let's go ahead, let's hop back into perspective here, and let's play. So now if I try and kind of move in here, there's really no chance of me getting in here. And I'm trying to get in here, and you can see it's still even like a little bit jittery. So that's basically what you want to do. In fact, if anything, if we hop back into top mode, I think it might be a little, maybe even just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, probably just a little bit bigger. Okay, so there we go. Now that is how we add in a blocking volume. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to save this first of all, and we're going to save current as, and then I'm going to say this is P02. Okay, and then I'm also going to save this as P03, because I'm showing you how to rapid prototype here. And then lastly, I'm going to save this as P04. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be rapid prototyping this level before we start adding any kind of code. So right now we have one, which is this kind of standard item here. And then if we open up level 2, it's pretty much the same thing. But let's just go ahead and build the lighting so that we don't get these artifacts here. So it might take a couple of seconds. So what I'm going to do in this while it's building is I'm going to show you. There we go. So that just looks a bit better. So one thing we're going to do is we're just going to delete that here, and then we're going to be adding in some other type of gameplay. So, obviously there's going to be something that you shoot at within this gallery here, but what I am going to do is I am going to test this out where we add in another kind, copy and paste, and I'm just going to move that up, and then I might as well switch to the top perspective here. We'll move that out. And then we'll scale this down quite a bit here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in kind of two shooting galleries that you can actually move in between. Okay. Now, what I find this to be quite interesting. So we'll kind of actually just move it actually this is probably good, but make sure it's right in the middle. And then we're going to move this out here, and I'm just going to move it back here. So the idea is that, there might be two kinds of things that you shoot at, okay? And you want to kind of test this idea here. So let's talk about how we test it here. So not only are we testing the idea of moving in between, but we also have to test the idea of how big this block is, okay? So let's take a look at this perspective here, and, well, let's scale this up quite a bit here. So we want it to be this big block, okay? So if we look at here, so the idea is like, there might be something here that you have to shoot at, and then, maybe you check the other side for something else to shoot at, okay? So these are two different things that you might do. Now, the question is, what can we do? So just kind of thinking off the top of my head, this actually looks kind of neat. And remember how I did say that this block size, hopping back into top mode here, is something that you need to ensure here. So this block size I thought was a little bit too small. So I'm going to move this back here, and that way it really forces the player to move around. Okay, so let's go ahead. So we see this here, and we move in here, and then you say, okay, look, we shoot, 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 and then there's something around here, and then we gotta shoot, 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 shoot. And what I find is like, okay, so for here, chances are the player is probably going to move like right here, and then they're going to turn around, and maybe there's some kind of target here you can get in between shots here. So that's actually kind of interesting. And there is is a nice little bug here. So that blocking volume is also blocking the projectile. So that is a huge problem, and we're going to have to deal with that soon. But basically, what we want to do in this is we want to just test different ideas. So we now have one where we add that in. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this other one here. Let's build the lighting, because the lighting needs to be rebuilt. And we need to think of another idea that would be fun. And the most logical thing that we could probably do is we could probably add in, I'm going to copy and paste this here, is we would make this smaller. Okay, so let's kind of just move this over here and maybe make it a bit bigger here, something like that. Okay, and then while we're here, we'll just kind of scroll this over like that, and then obviously we need to move this player down here. So this one, if we were to test something, we would test it in such a way. Let's just kind of do that here. It's exactly the same thing, except it's a lot smaller here. So I'm not sure. This is even a lot smaller here. And if you're going to do this, by the way, you want to test on how small you actually want to make it. Like, we can actually make this pretty small here. So if you were rapid prototyping this, and I'll just make this even bigger here. So like if you were prototyping this, you might actually make it really small. Okay, so let's see if this is even better here. Now this is exactly what you'd expect in a shooting gallery. The other one, if we were to look back, it's fairly big. So what we've done here is we've tested three. We've had one that's fairly big, and then the other that is where you have to kind of move around, and the third one is really small. Now you'll notice that, like, if you were to actually, you would never release this because we have all this extra geometry that doesn't frankly make sense, and for the most part that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're rapid prototyping. If you're rapid prototyping, you just simply need to make sure that you are testing things out. So let's go ahead and let's save that, and then lastly let's hop into the last one here. We're going to save selected here, and then the last one here is pretty much the same thing. Okay, and let's take a look here. Let's build the lighting, and we'll add in something else that needs to be added here to make this fun. All right, and what I think would be really fun is if we used, because right now the other thing is we're in a top-down perspective. Okay, what would be cool is if because we were working in the top-down perspective, that kind of it doesn't make our creativity very good because we're only using two axes, not three. So I think the third one that would be neat, and I'm just going to delete this in the third one here, is to actually make this something where you shoot down. Okay, and let's take a look. Okay, so what I would do is I'm just still going to go down to this top-down perspective here, and that's the wrong one. We're going to basically make this here like that, and we might as well make it a bit more like this, and we're going to copy and paste it here. Okay, we're going to simply copy and paste it, and for the most part, this isn't really necessary. Let's go back to the perspective here, and we're just simply going to move this down. Okay, so we're going to be shooting down into it now. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to make this a lot smaller. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing this as a lot smaller is because when you shoot down, you have perspective. Like if you're on a cliff or something, then you have to you kind of understand that you can see farther through the cliff. So I'm going to make this bigger, and I'm actually going to make this a lot smaller than I think. Okay, so I'm actually going to make this fairly small, and just like moving this over here, and I'm going to move that just like this. And then lastly, we need to add in these two volumes here and then move them over like that. Okay, so let's take a look at the perspective here. And I think that's starting to look pretty good. Let's go ahead and let's let's take a look at this scale here. And I'm going to move this up and then down. So we kind of have something like this here. This blocking volume, we'll kind of move that down as well too. And we might as well move this down. Actually, what we'll do is we will select both of these and this one here. Let's go back to the top here and just simply go in this here, and we'll say that this is 6. Hop back into perspective mode here, and then we'll kind of just move that down a bit. Okay, that looks good. And then while we scale this out, let's scale that to maybe 3. That's the wrong one. Let's maybe scale that to 15. Back to 1 here. Okay, and it looks like let's make it 35. There we go. Okay, so now we get the idea, right? And then we can kind of move this down as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at this here. So now we have this here, and we want to be able to shoot down. So we haven't quite got this yet. So and remember, it does take time to rapid prototype this thing. So let's kind of move up here and move this guy down. In fact, I actually don't think we need this box brush at all. Okay, we just need something to basically look it up over here. So we'll fix that blocking volume, but for the most part, you can see that now we can actually shoot down, right? Which I think is neat here. So let's take a look at what we've just done. We have one shooting gallery. We also have a shooting gallery where we move around. The third one is that it's a small shooting gallery, and then the fourth one is one where we shoot down. Now this is what you want to do when you're rapid prototyping. You want to make sure that when you do this, you are testing out these ideas. Now, one of these ideas is by default the best, and one of them is the worst. And sometimes your best is not always the last, right? So you'll find this here. Now, we've done 4. Now, I could do this 5 or 6 more times with different ideas, but for now, I think that's about it. So that's how you rapid prototype your levels. And of course, always make sure that you